Clive, Iowa, as you have been listening live to President Trump there for the better portion of about 55 minutes or so. This is a speech that the White House set up as part of his tour to go across the country as we are 39 weeks away until Election Day. Back in 2018, President Trump did this 21 different times, and the White House says this will be a theme going forward. Of course, part of the pitch to the American public there from the president, as you see the dance and the music plays, was about the economy and affordability. And this is what we expect the president to talk about going forward. But all of this, of course, comes on the backdrop of Minnesota and the shooting death of 37-year-old Alex Pretti, and the pivot here from the Trump administration. News from the president today saying that they are going to, quote, de-escalate a little bit in Minneapolis. I thank you for being with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm Blake Burman. As we watch the president do his thing there in Iowa, I want to bring in two men who know him as well as anyone. Sean Spicer, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House press secretary, with us. So too is Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, Trump's former White House chief of staff in the first administration. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us tonight. I wanted to start off with you to get your perspectives because it seems like the president is in a moment right now. We know how the American public feels about his economy, and now there's questions about ICE and the Department of Homeland Security and what happens in Minneapolis going forward. Sean and Mick, here's where I wanted to start off because there was a theme from the president today that I picked up on, and it wasn't necessarily about ICE. Rather, under the immigration umbrella, as we watched the president walk off the stage, he continually talked about the border. Here it is, and then let's pick it up.
We have an incredible team. We did something that nobody said was possible. We didn't go back to Congress and ask for legislation. We closed the border. The border is totally secure. You know, you forget. We had a border that I inherited where millions of people were coming through. Now we have a border where no one is coming through.
Mick, let me start with you. It was clear that he wanted to bring things back to the border today. Can he? And will the American people listen?
Sure, he can. Look, I wasn't concerned about the amount of time that he spent on immigration. I thought he would have spent more on the economy because they've got a decent story to tell there. But if his point is, look, let's get back to talking about the southern border where he's doing very well, that's good for him. If he's talking about, and I heard this a couple of times, getting back to that focus that was so critical to the campaign, that 90% issue of let's focus our deportation efforts on the really bad people, on the murderers, on the rapists, on the true criminal aliens, get back to those basics. Yeah, that's a winning argument. I was surprised he didn't spend a little bit more time on the economy today. That's all. That's really my primary criticism.
Sean, you know, you used to like to walk into the president and say, boss, here's how things are playing, and it's playing well. There was obviously a pivot and a change from the president over the last 24 hours. Where do you suspect he goes with this going forward?
Well, two things. One, on the border specifically, that's still a winning issue. When you look at the disparity in the polling, the American people give the president kudos, and rightly so, for his work securing the southern border and keeping people from illegally entering it. That's not the same as when you ask him about immigration policy, and that's sort of what's going on in Minnesota, et cetera. And so I think he wants to remind people of the root cause, so to speak, something that Kamala Harris couldn't get at. And he wanted to remind people, I've done what I said I would do. Keep the focus on the accomplishment that's still a net positive. That's what I really got in this, and I think you're going to continue to see that, which is remind people, and not just people, but everyone that has to run the midterm. This is the winning message. Talking about the border, what we've done to secure it, what the results have been, not only keeping folks from illegally entering, but keeping drugs and crime out of the country from coming in. That's where I think they really want that message to be. And to Mick's point, sure, I mean, it's repetition. They got to remind people. What I thought was interesting today is this speech should have been given right after the passage of the big, beautiful bill, right? This was a lot of no tax on tips, all the stuff that was codified in May. I'm glad he's doing it. They should do more of it. I hope they're out there once a week doing this. But it's interesting that this speech today could have been done 5 months ago.
Mick and Sean, let me leave both of you with this. Give me, if you can, in 15, 20 seconds. If you were back in your old roles, chief of staff, press secretary, Mick, I'll start with you. Given where the president is tonight, what would you be telling him?
Back to basics, but we have to build on it. We have to go back out. We have to do this 3 times a week for the next 39 weeks.
Sean?
Pretty much the same. I'd say double down on this. Let's do more of it. Let's get the cabinet to do more of it. Let's get our congressional leaders to do more of it. This has got to be a constant refrain. The thing that people are missing in campaigns now is it's not 1,000 or 1,500 points before this. One quick note, though. Kudos to NewsNation. As I scan the channels, NewsNation was the only major cable station covering this live right now. So this is a reminder to the White House that you can't just do an event and call it quits, right? You got to hammer it home with surrogate events, with local events. You've got to make sure that you are going where people are. That's independent media. The president did a great job of this on the campaign. You can't rely on just doing an event and hoping it gets picked up. You've got to hammer this home everywhere people are at.
Blake, please let the record reflect that I knew what 15 to 20 seconds was, and Spike was still struggling with that.
Well, we'll leave it there. He is the president of the United States.
Just a reminder, and just a quick reminder, Blake, Mick was acting chief of staff.
I
was
hear
actually
you guys.
Can I borrow your jacket, Spice?
We can do it all night.
I
got to run a break. Sean Spicer, Mick Mulvaney. 2 guys who've been in the room with the president with us tonight. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. There is lots of news tonight. Breaking right now, a shooting involving a U.S. Border Patrol officer in Arizona, leaving a person in custody and in critical condition. We'll get to that on the other side of the break. And tonight, the president with a noticeable change in leadership when it comes to ICE in Minnesota. We are live there when we return. You've been watching the president live. More news. Other side of the break. I'm Blake Burman. I'm back in full. 6:30 here on the East Coast and in Washington tonight, 4:30 out in the state of Arizona, and coming in right now from our Nexstar affiliate in Phoenix. One person in critical condition after exchanging gunfire with Border Patrol agents near the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, we are told, now investigating that happening right now in Arizona. Meantime, up in Minnesota, the border czar, Tom Homan, now wrapping up his first day overseeing immigration enforcement operations in the area and reporting directly to President Trump himself. While traveling in Iowa, President Trump saying that Homan's visit is going, quote, very well. Our Kelly Meyer live for us tonight at the White House with the changing of the guard there. Hello, Kelly.
Yeah, hey there, Blake. President Trump really taking questions from reporters today for the first time since the shooting of Alex Pretti, and as his immigration operation undergoes a significant change, including possibly getting agents out of Minnesota, and President Trump saying he'll do whatever is appropriate and bringing down the temperature in Minnesota, or as he called it, de-escalating a little bit. And this is all a change in tact following the shooting of Pretti and the growing backlash for his immigration crackdown. The president already taking the step of sending in his border czar, who he called, as you mentioned, Blake, a great guy, and removing his border control commander, Greg Bovino, from the scene, calling him a, quote, pretty out there kind of guy in an interview today. When pressed on the shakeup, this is what the president had to say today. Take a listen.
Mr. President, why did you decide to shake up your leadership team in Minnesota and send Tom Homan?
I do that all the time. I shake up teams. Everybody here, these are a lot of owners of farms and places, and you shake up your team if they can't do the crops fast enough. Look, we have an incredible team.
So President Trump says his DHS secretary is doing a very good job and won't step down as his Homeland Security secretary. Are Democrats, though, and Republicans as well, critical of Noem's handling of the president's immigration crackdown. We know that John Fetterman has called to fire her, saying she is betraying the department's central mission. We also heard today from the Democratic leader, top Democrat in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, saying Trump must fire Noem immediately or Democrats will start impeachment proceedings against her in the House. He also added, quote, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Blake.
Our Kelly Meyer live at the White House tonight. Kelly, thank you. Up now to Minneapolis, where she's been for the last couple weeks. We find our Allie Bradley once again with the very latest there. Hello, Allie.
Yeah, hey, Blake. So President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was here meeting with Mayor Jacob Fry and Police Chief Brian O'Hara this afternoon. And he also met with Governor Tim Walz this morning here in the Twin Cities. Now, Mayor Fry saying that he pushed for Operation Metro Surge to end as quickly as possible and made it very clear that the state will not enforce federal immigration laws. Governor Walz's office, meanwhile, says that he pushed for impartial investigations into the shootings and a reduction in federal forces in the state. Now, President Trump says the meetings in Minnesota went very well. Take a listen.
Tom Homan is over there. We all love Tom.
Yeah.
And he met with the governor, met with the mayor. He's going to meet with the mayor, I guess. And it's going very well.
Now, this all comes as sources confirm that Chief Gregory Bovino has officially left Minnesota and that he has been relieved of command as commander-at-large of these nationwide operations. Now, these are ongoing in places like Los Angeles and Chicago. Bovino will be going back to El Centro sector, where he was the chief. Now, several Border Patrol agents are also leaving Minnesota. However, some who were getting ready to leave were told to stay, something that Mayor Fry says he will continue to push against following those conversations. Now, this also comes as protesters appeared in Minnesota state capitol demanding investigations into the shootings. Blake.
Our Allie Bradley live for us tonight once again in Minnesota. Allie, thank you. All this, of course, as you saw here at the top of the hour and as we've been reporting throughout this evening, happening as President Trump makes a stop in America's heartland, kicking off a countrywide tour ahead of November's midterm elections.
12 months ago, Joe Biden handed us a mess. We inherited the legacy of record high inflation, the highest inflation in the history of our country. But today, just after 1 year of President Trump, our economy is booming.
The president focusing on affordability and the economy and touting lower gas and grocery prices. But it also comes as consumer confidence reaches its lowest level in more than a decade. New polling as well also shows a majority of Americans believe necessities like education and health care are unaffordable. Now, the president in Iowa today, Clive, Iowa, that state, as you might know, central to America's farming industry, which has faced a major strain, especially here in the recent years. Aaron Lehman is with us tonight. He's the president of the Iowa Farmers Union. Joins us now as the commander-in-chief was just in his state. Aaron, good of you to join us tonight. Thanks for being with us. I want to know what's going on there because I'm looking at Iowa, 30 million acres of farmland, 84,000 farms, 143,000 Iowa farmers. But I'm also looking at what it costs to grow there right now. Input costs are more than revenue, basically about 24% higher. What are you seeing across the state? I heard a lot of the president touting the economy and farming there. What are you seeing?
Yeah, our farmers are really reporting that they are on the verge of a crisis situation. We have inputs that have gone up 50% over the past decade. We're seeing a lot of farm bankruptcies, more in the first quarter of 2025 than all in 2024. And farmers are experiencing higher health costs, as your chart indicated. Our Iowa farmers are experiencing that as well. So our farmers are really facing a very difficult time.
The president has a $12 billion assistance package for farmers. You can call it a bailout, however you want to describe it. He was talking about how the money is out the door or getting out the door soon. As it relates to that, how much will that help where you are tonight?
Well, it's right to say that there's been big problems with our policies dealing with trade and to try to compensate farmers who have been caught in a chaotic trade policy. So it will not cover all the losses farmers are feeling, and it certainly won't deal with those long-term trade relationships that have been damaged. Our farmers are reporting that between higher costs and lower prices for what we grow, that they're having very difficult conversations with their bankers trying to figure out how to finance a crop to put in the ground this spring. The number of calls to farmer hotlines are going up for farmers who are in real economic stress.
You know, Aaron, we all saw a couple weeks ago, Mark Carney and Xi Jinping together strike a major trade deal. There's the quote-unquote mother of all deals that just got announced between the European Union and India. What does that mean? What is the president's trade policy meant from where you are? And for folks, obviously, who are not a farmer, what does this mean for food costs back at home?
Yeah, we just have not seen the promises that have been made regarding finding a new era in trade relationships. We need to get to fairer trade for farmers, for workers that make a real difference, both on the factory floor and in our fields. But we just haven't seen the impact of that yet. And it feels like we're farther away from getting to fair trade. In the meantime,
what would you want to tell the White House tonight, Aaron?
Yeah, we need to have a much more a trade policy that makes sense, right? That doesn't put farmers at the front lines of retaliation and we need to have something that is more consistent, right? We have real trade issues to deal with, but we're not getting to them because we're flipping tariffs on and off. We're using the wrong trade tools at the wrong time. And that just puts farmers at the front of the line for retaliation. And in the meantime, it doesn't mean lower food prices for the consumers that we want to grow food for.
Aaron Lehman is the Farmers Union president there in Iowa. Aaron, thank you. I should note Iowa, by the way, produces 17%. Consider this, 17% of the eggs in this country, 35% of all pork. President Trump in the heartland this afternoon. Well, still to come, Iran levels another warning as U.S. battleships converge in the Middle East. We heard President Trump talk about this moments ago. He called it a beautiful armada floating to Iran. I hope they make a deal, he says. The last time we saw this, he was talking about Venezuela. He's now talking about Iran. So what comes next? John Teichert with us on the other side of the break. Big story on the other side of the globe as the commander-in-chief is now surging assets to the Middle East as President Trump weighs potential military options against the Iranian regime. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group arriving in the Middle East late Monday. U.S. Central Command says the move will, quote, promote regional security and stability. Here's part of the language from President Trump tonight. He's calling this a, quote, big armada. This after Tehran reportedly killed thousands of its own citizens as it cracked down on nationwide protests against the regime. Our Robert Sherman, News Nation International correspondent, with the very latest here. And Robert, we hear the president once again using this term, different part of the world, but using the same term, armada.
Armada, yeah, that's the big word that the president is using. And the message that he has for Tehran is clear. The White House phone lines are open. But if Iran does not pick up the phone and call the White House, well, now the pieces are in place in order for the White House to make a bigger move. Here's what the president said tonight.
There's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal.
Now, you heard him say another beautiful armada. Earlier in the day, he compared the size of this fleet of ships to what was off of the coast of Venezuela, saying it's even bigger this go-around. We all know how that went last time. Those troops that are a part of the Abraham Lincoln's Carrier Strike Group currently going through readiness drills in case the situation deteriorates in Iran. Publicly, though, Iran is not backing away. This is what their foreign ministry said today in light of this news. The arrival of a certain warship is not going to shake Iran's will or determination to defend the country with full force. We have both the will and the full capability to defend Iran. Elsewhere in the region, you saw scenes such as this one in Beirut, with Hezbollah's leader giving a televised address, trying to rally supporters, as many of the regime's proxies have said they're prepared to stand by the leadership in Tehran. Blake?
As Robert Sherman said, we know how this ended last time around. Robert Sherman, live for us abroad tonight. Robert, thank you. Here's why I want to bring in retired Air Force Brigadier General John Teichert, former combat pilot with more than 2,000 flying hours on 38 different aircraft. General? Good evening.
Blake, good evening.
These are some of the assets, okay? So you have the carrier strike group, the Abraham Lincoln, the destroyers, the combat ships. This is not everything. This is just some of what's going on in that area right now. What does this all mean tonight?
Blake, this is a sizable, beautiful armada, and it provides the president options. Those could be offensive options. Those could be defensive options. They could be options to levy a blockade against ships in the region. We don't know, but certainly now the firepower of this armada, combined with 40,000 or so American forces that are already in the region, makes a sizable deterrent and provides options to the president.
All right, so let's go over those options. What are they as you see them?
The options are that the president could strike preemptively in support of the protesters, or just the fact that this armada is there provides enough of a top cover to protesters that now the regime in Iran has to defend against an external threat, which means he can't use those forces against the internal protesters. And that might provide the type of options that allow protests to bubble back up in Iran.
And if the protests don't bubble back up, then what?
It's really tough for me to see that individual strikes by the United States would do something to move the needle in Iran. That is not going to topple the Ayatollah. It's not going to do anything that's going to diminish their ballistic missile feat to a sizable level.
Okay.
That really, we are the supporting function here. We are there to support protesters, and only if the protesters start again the energy of the protests does strikes on internal security sites actually move the needle.
All right, so these are some of the assets right now near the Middle East, and we just showed you, and let's put it on back, what happened in Venezuela last time. 2 carrier groups, Salt Ship, and you see all the rest there. And the reason why I bring it up is because this is the language that I heard from the commander-in-chief last time, which is we have an armada, there's communications of some kind at that point with Maduro, and when all of this was out there, Nicolas Maduro was in Caracas, and tonight he's in a Brooklyn prison. It leads to the question, with the president now talking about armada again and all the assets going in, how does this compare to what we had in Venezuela before the commander-in-chief made that decision?
Blake, again, the size of the naval fleet is about the same, but we also have those 40,000 additional Americans that are in planes stationed throughout the Middle East that provide a lot more options and a lot more firepower to the president now than he even had in the Caribbean a month ago.
So more than Venezuela?
Far more.
And it's because of the 40,000?
Absolutely right.
Wow. This is why we continue to keep our eye on it. General, we hear the president saying what he says. What he actually does next is one of the big decisions before the commander-in-chief tonight. John Teichert, General, not the last time we'll be talking about this. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Blake.
Of course. All right. Still to come tonight, a hero story from the heartland. A fire truck not fighting fires, but against the freeze, the nationwide dig-out, and what one man decided to do himself when we return.
Americans rely on The Hill for politics and policy news more than any other digital politics publication. The Hill. Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. Visit thehill.com today.
All right, well, the brutality of this winter weather has taken its toll on millions around a huge portion of the country. And in just one example that we want to show you tonight, Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example, saw 9 inches of snow, wind chills well below zero there. The local government warning citizens about hypothermia, pleading with them to stay inside, but for some, that's just not an option. And that's where Tulsa resident Ryan Duvall comes in. He bought a more than 40-year-old vintage fire truck at a government auction a while back. That's Ryan, and that's the truck. And that truck pretty much just sat on his property until this week.
I just saw a need for getting people out of the cold, just cruise the streets, see someone, offer a ride. If they take it, great. If not, I can at least warm them up in the truck and just get them a water, meal, something. And it's just giving back to a community like everybody should do.
Like everybody should do indeed. How about that out there in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Well done, Ryan Duvall, bringing a much-needed warm front to the brutal cold. Well, Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up next here on News Nation. She will speak to the mother of a 15-year-old who has been missing for 2 weeks. The mother believes her son went to see someone he met on the gaming platform Roblox. That's coming up about 50 seconds away right here on News Nation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight. Before we head out, I want to show you a live shot, Capitol Hill and Marco Rubio. Here's why I'm showing you that. Tomorrow, the Secretary of State before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's expected to testify on Venezuela. But as you just heard in our other segment, there's a whole lot out there before the Commander-in-Chief. You might imagine he gets asked about Iran, what might happen there. President Trump saying today that Cuba is failing. And then, of course, there's questions about Greenland and the administration's policy. Marco Rubio up on the Hill tomorrow. We'll be here for it. I thank you so much for watching us tonight. I'm Blake. Elizabeth starts right now.